Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the Jewish community of Sedona and the Verde Valley. I'm Alicia Magal, the rabbi, and this is our third class in lay leadership and delving underneath the meanings of the parts of the Erev Shabbat service. This week, we're going to talk more about the Torah service because it is our custom, since we don't always have a Saturday morning service when the Torah is usually read, we have a small Torah service on Friday night. So we will be talking about the role of the Gabbai and the little steps that you have observed hundreds and hundreds of times, but perhaps you weren't conscious of. When you're a leader, it's very different. So I will start the share. We're going to be talking about this week, the Torah service, the role of the Gabbai, and the materials that you will need. Next week will be the checklist of preparation, outlines, slides, tech, honors, music, coordinating with volunteers, etc. And we'll have practice for anyone who wants to lead either services or even a part of it. And it could be fun just to come, even if you're not going to lead service. But if you are, then please come in person next week. So what are the blessings for Torah reading? What are the Gabbai's roles and instructions? How do they do it? How do they call people up? And what are the possibilities of reading and chanting from the Torah scroll or other ways? And what's the choreography of people who have an aliyah? This all works very smoothly, but when you're leading it, you have to know what's next so that you can, I call it choreography, but you can lead the steps, the motions, without any bumps. It just goes very smoothly. So let's look at what is a Gabbai. Anita, would you please read this?
Originally, the word Gabbai meant collector, treasurer, entrusted with collecting charity funds or managing financial affairs in Jewish communities. The term came to signify someone who acted as a steward, assisting in the smooth functioning of the liturgical practices with ritual knowledge and dedication to the synagogue leadership.
Thank you. So you can see that it used to be much more of a job than what it is right now. And in some traditional congregations, it still is much more expanded. Now, what is liturgical practices? Liturgy is what's in the prayer book. It's the prayers. It's the order of what comes next. It's the customs and practices of that particular community. So we'll talk more about that. So here are the functions in a traditional synagogue, because it's a spiritual and a communal calling. Sheila, would you read these?
Who is the Gabbai? Functions in the traditional synagogue, a spiritual and communal calling. First, assigning honors for aliyot, opening the ark, carrying the Torah, leading prayers, empowering congregants to participate. Second, maintaining ritual objects and making sure they're handled with reverence. 3, monitoring the Torah reading, ensuring accuracy of the Hebrew words as they are being read.
And I must say that in our community, it's really number 3 that has been the most emphasized, where usually it's Yona Salberg who stands next to me, sometimes Joe Berger, sometimes I call on other people who know how to read Hebrew, and they monitor the Torah reading. Their job is to ensure the accuracy of the Hebrew words. If you make a mistake in the trope, in the melody, it's okay. But if you say, oh, Omar and should be Amar or some other form, because since there's no vowel in the printing of the Torah, it's easy to make a mistake. And so since everyone should hear the words of Torah accurately, the Gabbai has the job of correcting words, and then they should be repeated and the reading goes on. Gloria, would you read the rules for honors, please?
Yes, the first rule, men or women called up to open the ark, walk with the Torah, or have the honor of aliyah to the Torah are Jewish. 2, readings at the podium can be done by anyone, whether Jewish or not. 3, our custom at the JCSVV is that those opening the ark, carrying the Torah, or coming up for an aliyah wear a talit, prayer shawl, and men wear a kippah. This is the custom, and most people abide by that. But if someone is uncomfortable or is not used to wearing a talit, we would not insist, although often a partner would wrap their talit around the other person's shoulder. And 4, the person coming up for the aliyah approaches on the ark side of the bima. If there is more than one aliyah, the person then moves to the podium side of the bima to wait during the next aliyah before taking their seat. We rush to be near the Torah and delay to leave in its presence.
Thank you so much. So any questions or comments about these rules? Yes, Mary.
So are you going to address later what Jews and non-Jews are encouraged in the service? Or should I ask it now for this? And if you didn't bring it up for the readings or whatever else?
Well, if they're recognized as Jewish, they can do the honors that have to do with the Torah, opening the ark, closing the ark, walking with the Torah, or having an aliyah. Is there something further?
Well, I know you said that if it were a mixed couple, that a non-Jew could come up to the bima but would not say the blessing, that it would be their partner. I also had a further question about ages. Could a youngster who's Jewish come and open the ark? And of course,
Yes.
then they would not wear a talit, I don't think. You know,
Right.
there's nuances that I'm not sure of.
That's true. That's true. So a katin, a minor, someone who has not become bar or bat mitzvah, can open the ark. They would not wear a talit. You're correct. And the only time that I do this with the couples, it's if it's a bar mitzvah. You know, you don't want to shame someone, and very often it's the parents who have the aliyah before the child, and they want to be up there, and so I make that exception, as some of my colleagues do. And the non-Jewish partner would not be saying Bahar Banu because they are not bound by the mitzvot, who has chosen us from among all peoples to do this mitzvah. They are not bound by that mitzvah. So, but they want to be up there, and the prayer, the blessing is said by the Jewish partner. So thank you for bringing that up. Anita?
So with a group aliyah, can we get the wording for how to invite people up with regard to they should be Jewish?
Yeah, it's sensitive, isn't it? We've had some examples of people coming up who feel called by the blessing of being near the Torah, but they're not halachically Jewish. And we do want to make that boundary. So I often say, those of you with a Hebrew name, or Jewish people are now called to the Torah by this blessing of the journeys of the children of Israel, or whatever the particular blessing of that particular verse is. And you just got to watch your words, but you don't want to shame anybody. So we know people who have some kind of Jewish background, but they're not exactly halakhically Jewish. I wouldn't kick them off the bima, but I might talk to them quietly at another time. And you've got to be very careful. It's a touchy subject, but we do have boundaries. This is actually today is Gevura Sheba Malchut. It's perfect. It's the boundaries and the discipline within our actual day-to-day living. What could be more perfect than a question like that today? So I can't give you a perfect answer, but I want you to be sensitive to the nuances, as Mary said. I see Harold's hand, or is that Susan? Susan.
With respect to Jewish ritual and observance in our synagogue, we do have bylaws on it, and we do have policies and procedures on it. Anybody coming up during the Torah service while the ark is open and the Torah is out has to be Jewish. You can't have non-Jewish people on the bima when the Torah is out.
I understand that we have practices, but then there's real life when something
Well,
happens.
I'm just saying, somebody about it.
We have to balance compassion with rules.
Understood, but we have certain rules that are enforced and others, and you want to change the bylaws. And if
No, we don't want to change any bylaws, and I wrote it in the rules. You have it in black and white in the slide I just said. And I just said here and there are times when it's a little bit.
No, I understand, and you're right. I mean, there's no way on this God's green earth that if we have a baby naming for our granddaughters, that my daughter-in-law, who's not Jewish, is gonna be up there. You know, it has to be. But
Good, I'm glad you gave a good example. So
no,
let's
there-
go on. Gloria.
I wasn't through.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. But if you look at policy and procedure 2.3 in the manual, you'll see a section on sanctuary etiquette. And then the granting of aliyot honors and readings is section B. And you should be guided by that when you're making these choices.
Yes. And that's why I wrote the rules out on the slide. Gloria.
In my previous experiences in other synagogues, when there were multiple aliyot, we Richard and I would stay on the bima while for the people behind us to finish their aliyah. And if they were coming over, we would take the time to shake their hand and wish them Yasher Koach. But I always feel like it's kind of one of those uncomfortable spots. Are we staying up too long? When is the right time to leave? What's the appropriate way to deal with that?
Well, let's say it's the High Holy Days where we let's say it's we're going to have 6 aliyot or more than 2. And so then there's a flow as the new people are coming up. The people who have just finished go, and the ones who have just finished take their place. And there really isn't a moment for shaking hands unless it sort of happens automatically that they move over quickly. But there is this movement. The next people come up to the rabbi's right, right next to that side of the bima. And the ones who just finished and had their blessing, they go over to the other side because they don't want to rush away. You want to linger, and they linger through the next aliyah, and then the next group moves over. Is that clear?
Okay. So it's not staying there to kind of welcome them to that side.
If it happens, that's beautiful. If you see that there's like 3 or 4 people moving over, it might not, you could just, nod to them and then go over. There's no rule about that, but it's a lovely gesture. And whenever possible, saying Yasher Koach or making some motion or shaking hands or something is a lovely thing to do. Also for the people who are in their seats, when someone comes down from an aliyah, you see that beautiful moment of Yasher Koach and hands and just feeling connected. It's a lovely custom. As a matter of fact, the Sephardim take their talit when they come down and they waft their blessing at the people who are seated. There are all kinds of different possibilities, but it's a moment of connection and acknowledgement that they've just been honored and that they're returning kind of uplifted and filled. So I'm glad you brought that up. Anything else on the aliyah? Yes, Sybil.
Well, I was only going to make the comment to Gloria is that I think it's a lovely gesture to shake hands with the people, but our bima has been, with the table having moved back, it's so crowded up there that I don't know whether, it's kind of nicer especially if it's like 2 people and 2 people having if it's a single person having an aliyah, but if you have 2, like a couple and then another couple, it's just crowded up there is all I'm going to say. So unfortunately.
Well, there's room to maneuver, and if we need to move the table one way or another, especially High Holy Days, we've got the flowers in the front. But for a regular Shabbat, we have some space to maneuver. For Erev Shabbat with Leiled, we could move it up a little bit. Susan.
Procedures manual, policy 2.3. Section B2 talks about who has to be a member of the Jewish faith to do certain things. And that includes lighting the Shabbat and Yom Tov candles, opening and closing the ark, reading the blessings before and after the reading of the Torah, carrying the Torah and Hokafot, Hadba and Galila can only be performed by those who are of the Jewish faith. And that, I think, is not bendable. However, I think if you have a mixed couple, and quite frankly, we do have an issue about non-Jews on the Bima when the Torah is out. But like, for example, we have Jews and non-Jews in the choir, and when the Torah is out, they cannot be standing on the bima. They have to be on one step, the second, what is it, the third step, second step, whatever, just below the bima. And the same thing, although I quite frankly, if the Torah is out and the child, for example, is becoming a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, it would seem suitable to me that the non-Jewish parent be allowed to stand there, wrap the partner's tallis around that person's shoulders, and they just stand there and don't say anything.
So that's exactly what we do.
Yeah, probably the best way to handle it, I would think.
Well, a lot of thought went into that. So I'm glad for this discussion where we're clarifying it.
Yeah, a lot of thought went into these bylaws too, trust.
And I know that you put a lot of thought into it. And a
So,
lot of experience, like we would have examples and say, but what if this, what if that, because we lived it.
that's right, that's right. And those are the guiding principles.
Wonderful. All right, let's go on with the Torah service. So then comes the procession. The leader announces who will open the ark, who will act as Gabbai, and who will walk with the Torah scroll. Once they all come up to the bima and the ark is opened, all stand and sing Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, which is on page 364. But there's a lot more that could be said before Ki Mitzion, but we've taken on the practice of just starting there. If you want to start earlier, you can look at the pages. We can discuss it in our practice session because there's more introductory material. But this is what we've come up with. Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, Devar Adonai Mirushalayim. And the ark is opened and people who are able rise. Always do allow for people who not to feel pressured, please rise if you are able, is a kind way to give permission to someone whose back hurts or whose knees can't take it and who can sit. And every once in a while I'll say, but feel elevated inside, and I see smiles. So you always want to be compassionate in giving your directions. So then the leader stands next to the person holding the Torah scroll in front of the ark and proclaims, the whole world stands on three things or three supports: Torah, study; Avodah, worship and celebration; and Gemilut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness. Then the ark is closed behind you, and the person holding the Torah scroll leads a procession, and here I've got the choreography, up the center aisle, over to the right, down the piano side, across to the TV monitor side, up to the back, and finally down the center aisle, back up to the bima, where the Gabbai assists in taking off the Torah mantle, untying it, opening up to the place that has been set during the week, and there comes the time for the Gabbai to take over and call the Aliyah. Any questions on this part? Yes, Mary.
So, because I have a bar mitzvah student, I was wondering, when we sing Al Shlosha Devarim, does the person who is carrying the Torah, are they supposed to sing? Is it up to them? Is it enough just to be smiling because he's so excited and
Definitely
take it
enough
around?
to be smiling. I wonder if I've had that picture near me. The first time I carried the Torah in Temple Emmanuel, there's a picture of me glowing, smiling. I was not singing. I was holding the Torah, and you can see the sweep of Talitot coming toward me in an energy touching the Torah. And so, no, they don't. And it's enough for them to be guided around the room by the person leading them behind. They do not have to be singing at all. It's too emotional, especially if it's the first time you're doing it. Anita.
When we have a very large congregation in attendance, that's when we split.
When we have two Torahs going at
We
the
have two
same time.
Torahs, we'll split. Okay.
Yeah,
But generally, on Friday night, we're just going to use one Torah anyway, right?
Exactly. The other thing is, at a bar or bat mitzvah, This is the part where we have the Shalshelet Hadorot, the chain of generations. If there's grandparents, parents to the child, we actually pass the Holocaust Torah down the generations. And that is a most moving moment. I sometimes can't hold myself together, even thinking about it. And I always ask the family, who is there? It's Jewish grandparents that could hand the Torah down. And then we have the thing again, if one of the parents isn't Jewish, they still should be handing it down because they're part of the education process. It's just too important. And we're I mean, how wonderful that they want their child to have a Jewish education and be part of this. So we hand it down through the generations at this point before the procession. Yes, Susan.
Does the leader of the service have the choice of the song that's going on while the procession is going? Like sometimes we'll sing Al Shloshah Devarim, and other times we'll sing Ramemu. And I
Yeah,
think
you can change anything you want. I have the custom so that people will feel comfortable of always doing Lacha Adonai unless we have choir, in which case we do 3.
right.
Lacha Adonai Hagedula and Romemu and Lacha, because we need all that time and we've got the choir. But I want congregants to feel, oh, I know this, I can participate. And so I just do the same thing every single week.
Yes.
Mary.
So speaking of congregants who think, oh, I know this, I can sing this, knowing that when you say a blessing, you should follow it up with an action. We have congregants who are saying the blessing before Torah reading when they're in the congregation, not up there on the bima. And I know we don't want to embarrass people, but should there be a teaching? Because if I'm learning by attending services, I'm going to think it's okay when I learn the words because they're singing it and they know the words. So how do we make our service more appropriate halachically and a better learning experience for people who, like me, didn't grow up in a synagogue that went, say, more by the rules?
Excellent. So we're just getting to the blessing. So let's do that now. And let me just get to the next one. So there's Al Shlosha Devarim. The world is sustained by 3 things: Torah, worship, and loving deeds. And here's how we call up a person to the Torah. So the Gabbai and the leader should have the names, their full Hebrew names of those honored with an Aliyah. This is how it should sound. For the honor of the Aliyah, or if you've got 1 or 2 or more, you go the first Aliyah. We call, let's say, Isaac and Mindy Shapiro. Ya'amod Yitzchak ben Levi Bechana. Ta'amod Miriam bat Yossi Sarah Leah la Aliyah. Now you don't have to chant it. I just automatically chant, but you could say it. But this is how you do. Ya'amod means may the person. This is masculine singular. So and so, the son of father and mother, and this is Ta'amod. May she, third person feminine, the woman, daughter of father and mother, come up. So like Amidah means the standing prayer. Ya'amod is the verb form. May this person stand up or come up or be called up. La aliyah, to the aliyah, to the coming up honor. Any questions about this calling? Now, probably you would have either Yona or Joe, but maybe not. So you should know how to do this. So question about the grammar or the format of calling someone up. So that's clear. All right, so now we get to, let's read this, Patty, reading or chanting from the Torah.
During the week, the Torah should be set to the verses in the portion of that week. If the reader needs to have a picture taken of the actual selection in the scroll, we will provide that. Also, the rabbi will provide a printed page containing the Hebrew verses with the vowels and the throat markings. It is preferable to have the reader read or chant from the scroll, but if necessary, the reader can use the printed practice sheet. The person honored with the aliyah is shown the starting place in the scroll, touches it with tzitzit, kisses the fringes, then offers the first blessing before the reading.
Good. Any questions on that? You've seen people do that. And when you come up, sometimes we have to be guided because your heart beats fast and you sort of forget and you're not in your seat just watching. So it's really important to guide people. This is where we're starting. And you use the yod. Make sure that the blessings are up there. Make sure that the name is up there. Make sure you have the yod. Yes, Anita.
So if they do not repeat what the congregation chants, do we correct them?
I would say no. Let's look at the pages from the Siddur. So here on page 368 is what you're talking about, where the person having the aliyah starts Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorach. This is the part where the congregation should answer, and maybe I'll be more specific in the future and say, the person having aliyah will start, I didn't know I had to do this, but we'll begin the first line and all of us will offer a response. But they're actually doing the blessing. I guess I hadn't really heard, except for the last line of the blessing, which often people do. I hadn't heard that people were chanting along. Gloria?
Yeah, there are particular people that do this every time, and they're not attending the class, obviously.
Got
But,
it. Okay, so Baruch
you
Hu
know,
Adonai
yeah.
Hamborach, everyone answers. Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Ba'ed. Then the person repeats that. Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Ba'ed. And they go on with the next blessing. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten ha'torah. We all say amen. So I would not go back and correct them just because then they get very confused, like where are they? I sometimes nod and I kind of make a face like, okay, they missed it, never mind, because the blessing is going to be said in its entirety one way or another. So we're not skipping anything, just that it's usual that there's a repeat and then there's a response and then the repetition of the person going on. But you'll have to deal with that in the moment. Sometimes there's a big pause and then you might, the best is to chant very quietly with them. And that way you're guiding again, unless it's someone who's really, really comfortable with it. Then comes the Torah reading. And
Wait, Rabbi, can we go back to Gloria's question?
yeah,
Because Gloria, are you asking if those in the congregation are doing this together or if they're just doing the second?
No, they're doing the whole thing from
The
the
whole
start
thing.
to the finish.
But in a sense, aren't we all participating in the Torah reading?
They don't have the aliyah, but they're present. So that's an interesting question. I would just say, let's make sure we can hear the person with the aliyah doing their blessing. It's an honor when you come up and do the blessing. So maybe I'll gently, let's talk about gentle. Hold on. Speaking of gentle, you know how when we say Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, what comes next? Baruch Shem Kavod, in a whisper. And there are some people who say it way out loud and they don't get the hint that it's said in a whisper. This isn't terrible. It's just not done because that's an interruption in Deuteronomy 6:4 that just continues ve'ahavta. So it's a response, but it's not part of the Torah verses that continue with ve'ahavta. So every once in a while, I'll say something about, we say this in a whisper, but sometimes it's just not, it just doesn't go in. So let's be, again, compassionate and just keep modeling what's right. That's the best I can do on that, but I know what you mean. Okay, Ten Torah, let me share again. These are all very practical questions you're asking based on our experience. So the Gabbai follows along with the printed page of the verses that are sitting right next to it. You could do it from the tikkun, from the book, but I just always print out. It's easier to find. I just print out those verses that we have chosen, and softly offers correction if a word is mispronounced. They shouldn't sound like they're bullying the reader, but just offering the correction. So there's a way to do it. This is so that the congregation hears the exact correct words from the Torah. There's so many words that are similar, and it's so easy to make a mistake. So we hope that the Gabbai will be following and offering, and that the congregation will understand that that is their job. Yes, Anita.
So one Friday night, somebody leaned over as Yona was correcting you. Somebody leaned over to Linda and me and said, how can they do that? That's disrespectful of the rabbi. And we quietly explained, no, that's their job.
Their job. Very good. Okay. All right, so then comes the blessing after the reading of the Torah. If we remember, they touch the end place also. And make sure that you've said it, because it's called a tircha letzibur. It's called an annoyance for the congregation if you have to be rolling forward and back and say, where are we? No, you have to know exactly where you are. I have parchment colored stickies that I put, and it doesn't hurt the Torah scroll at all. And I put where we begin, and that saves a lot of time and effort. Yes, Harold.
Is it true that saying or getting aliyahs, whether it's opening the ark or saying the blessings or whatever, are those are considered honor parts? So is it not proper to request an aliyah?
Oh, you can request. It's an honor that can be asked for. It can be assigned. It can be begged for. I mean, it could be all kinds of things. We start with people who have a birthday, an anniversary, a yard site, some reason to be there, to be honored, and then somebody who's in the board or who just comes every week, or who's been volunteering a lot. All kinds of reasons. And if somebody says, it's my mother's yard site in 3 weeks, I'd like the aliyah, that's perfectly beautiful. What a lovely thing to ask for an honor in the memory of somebody or to honor somebody. Sure. What we don't do is auction them off.
What?
You don't auction them off like in an Orthodox shul. That always cracks me up. Okay, so the second blessing, let's look at it for a minute. Same melody. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chaye olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Now you may have heard that 1,000 times, but do you realize that you've just heard words of Torah, ancient teachings? And what this is saying is, thank you, God, ruling over time and space, who gave us a teaching of truth. Torah is not only the 5 books, but it means a teaching. Emet is truth. V'chaye olam, eternal life, life forever. Nata b'tochenu. This isn't natan, which is to give. Nata is to plant. So planted within us, eternal life. Wow. It's also giving new life to the Torah teachings by the very act of offering the blessings and listening to the teaching and being present. So it's like a new leaf on the tree of life. I love this part. Chaye olam nata b'tochenu. So think of that. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when I get to this, sometimes let me show you what I do. I kind of go this motion, nata b'tochenu, planted within us, eternal life. And I have this sense of giving it new life. And again, it's something that moves me greatly. I don't think I've ever shared this before, unless it's with somebody who's actually like studying for a bar bat mitzvah as an adult. But I want you to know what you're saying, and I want you to know what the people are saying in case it comes up at the moment that it just strikes you to say, yes, eternal life is being planted in you by the very fact that you're present here at this Torah reading. Now, that might not be appropriate in the moment, but you never know. The more you understand the words, the more you're present in the moment, the more such a flow might happen in the moment where you want to mark something that has been emphasized in some way in the moment. And you can't prepare for that. The only way to prepare is to study, 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 and to know what you're saying and what you're hearing. Because then you can be real in the moment. And that's the layer on top or beneath all of the preparation that you've done. You can prepare and prepare and prepare, but in the moment, something can happen. Allow it. That is one of the reasons why I'm giving this course, so that you can go beneath, below, and into these holy words, and not just on the surface of knowing what comes next. That's only the technical aspect, which you have to have in your pocket. But you've got to have something in your pocket too. All right, so let's see.
Sheila had her hand up.
Who did?
Sheila.
Sheila, yes, ma'am.
So often in fact, always, our congregation sings chants along at the end of
That's fine.
the Aliyah. That's the question. Is that
You know why? You know why they do that? Because it's custom as you're finishing a Torah Aliyah, that the people who are following along, because in many congregations they're following along in the Chumash, they're actually following along, they'll chant the ending with them, da 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 da, you know, at the very end. So it's kind of like support of that ending. That's perfectly fine. It's just it shouldn't be for the whole time. But since they do it at the end of the phrase in the Torah, if they know it, sometimes that carries over to the last blessing. I've noticed that.
nice?
Very observant. Thank you. All right, following the reading. Now, this is important. The person is thanked. And I have the custom, because I come from a renewal background as well as, you know, I'm interdenominational. I've studied with all the different denominations. I have the custom of blessing the person related to the verses I've just heard or chanted. But that is not usually part of the leader's role. You do not have to do that. And I'm going to show you the traditional blessing. And it's not anything like what I give. So I wanted to make that sure. If it is a very special occasion or the person's first time coming up for an Aliyah, you might want to add Shehechianu. And it's nice when you turn to everybody and say, oh my God, this is first time. Let's all say Shehechianu. And everybody brightens up and everybody smiles and everybody says it with you. So again, be in the moment, aware of opportunities, either to offer blessing or a thank you, or just to note something lovely that's just happened. Okay, let's see. Susan, would you read this, please? This is following the reading. This is the traditional blessing, and it's in the Siddur. Read this.
Traditional blessing for the person with the Aliyah on page 370 of the Siddur in Hebrew and English. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless Harold, son of Yonah of Yisrael, since she has come up to the Torah in honor of God and Torah. May he merit from the Holy One of blessing, protection, rescue from any trouble or distress, and from any illness. May God send blessing and success in his every endeavor, together with all Israel, and let us say Amen.
So that's always said very, very quickly in Hebrew, but I wanted you to see that this is the traditional blessing. I got it, the translation in English. Thank you for those hearts, Anita. And it's like, what do they call it? Boilerplate. It's like one same blessing that's given to everybody who comes up. And I come from a different tradition where there's just something that happens in that moment, that's something relevant, some word, some phrase, some meaning in the verses that have just been chanted, is also extended to the person standing there, and it's made personal. And I've never actually prepared it. It just happens in the moment. And don't feel like you have to do that. That is just my particular custom. Yes, Gloria.
I've got to thank you for what you do after the Aliyahs. They are, if whatever you say is always right. And it just amazes me that it just pops up in the spur of the moment. In my minyan in Temple Emmanuel in New Jersey, we do that traditional reading, and then who's ever leading the service will ask, and your reason for coming up for the Aliyah is, so that you get to share. So if it's in a yurt site, you get to talk about whoever passed away, or if it's something you recovered from an illness and you're going up there. It's always something that gets attached to that prayer to make it more personal.
That's very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. There will be opportunities to do that if I haven't said it, and keep that in mind. That may be why you chose to offer the Aliyah to the person if you chose the honors. Thank you very much for that. All right, then comes the Drash, sometimes called Devar Torah. It's a teaching on the Torah. And let's see, Sybil, would you read that, please? Can you unmute? Thank you.
Someone not necessarily the leader of the service offers a teaching relating to the themes of the Torah portion to our lives today as an uplifting takeaway for everyone at the service. It should contain some research and scholarship going more deeply into the meanings and lessons of the Torah portion, and also have a component that is relatable and giving the teaching something memorable and personal from the speaker. The Torah mantle covers the Torah scroll during the drash.
Thank you. Yes, you never want to leave the Torah scroll, as it were, naked and uncovered and unprotected. So when it's not being read from, it's covered. If it's not completely tied and dressed, at least it's covered. So you may notice that Yonah takes the mantle and just places it on top of the Torah scroll so that it'll be ready later for Hagbaha and being held up. So it's not dressed yet, but it is covered. So please remember that. We come now to the healing blessing. Misha Berach just means may the one who blessed. It's just the first 3 words of the blessing itself. We've come to call it like the Misha Berach, and there are many different versions of it. And we have often used the Debbie Friedman version, which is printed in our Siddur. Let's see, Harold, would you read this, please?
Misha Berach, a list of those who have agreed to have their names read out loud will be provided by the rabbi prior to the service. Feel free to add any additional names and remember to ask the congregants to add names of those they wish to bless with healing. The blessing is on page 371, the inside back cover of the Siddur, and on the slide.
Right, which blessing? It's the Debbie Friedman version, Misha Berach. Now I try to rotate and have different ones, and when we have a choir, we use different versions, but again, there are various versions in our prayer book. If you choose to have a different one, just remember, you can change something once or twice, even maybe 3 times, but not more than that in a service. You want people to have comfort, and you also want them to have some innovation. So it's an interesting balance. You want to make sure that people feel comfortable, and the ones who come all the time have something they can recognize, and also something new to perk them up and say, oh, I didn't, never heard it that way. Now returning the Torah to the ark, Anita.
The same people who open the ark come back to help close the ark. The honor of Hagbaha, we have to discuss which one that really is, and Glila, holding up the Torah scroll and dressing it, are given to someone. The Gabbai often helps as well with the tying of the binder and putting the mantle on the scroll. The leader and everyone point with a pinky to emphasize the words, V'zot HaTorah, etc. This is the Torah which Moshe brought to the people of Israel, Hashem's word through the hand of Moshe, which is sung.
Various commentaries on why you point with the pinky. It's considered rude to point with the pointing finger, but we want to say this is the Torah, so we're pointing, and I like not to extend my arm too much, just because that motion can be misconstrued in a picture and does not look good. So
we talk about Hagba versus Hagbaha.
Well, do you say Sukkot or Sukkot? Do you say Shabbos or Shabbat? Do you say Hagba or Hagbaha? So it's a kind of common shorthand to say Hagba, but Yona was right. The actual word is Hagbaha. So, and Glila means the rolling, because you have to roll it up and then you tie it. And I have found that it helps for either the leader and or the Gabai to be helping, and not to give Glila as another honor. It's just too difficult for someone who's not used to working with this particular Torah to do all that. So Hagba, yes, but Glila, the dressing, we kind of just do ourselves up there. It could be given away as an honor. In some places it is. There it is. V'zot HaTorah. This is how it looks in the prayer book. And I don't have a slide because I want people to be looking at the Torah at that moment. So I did not put this as a slide, but I'm showing you. This is the Torah. And yes, Mary, you have a question.
Yeah, I wanted to go back on the other one, that if you're wearing a talit, you raise the tzitzit on one corner, right?
Yes. Yeah, you raise your talit and you're just pointing in a way to say, this is the Torah. You're actually acting out what you're singing. This is the Torah. Here, I just see it right there. I'm looking at it. Yes, so I do it with the talit in my hand. But not everybody who's sitting would be having one on. So again, we're combining Saturday morning custom with Friday night. Friday night in the evening, you don't wear a talit, but if you're going up to the Torah, you wear a talit. So we've combined it. If you have an honor, then people wear a talit. The only time,
And if we're leading the service, we have a talit. So
Yeah.
you're talking to us as service leaders.
right, so service leader would be wearing it and would be pointing that way. The only time that you wear a talit in the evening is Erev Yom Kippur for Kol Nidre. There's V'zot HaTorah, the way it looks in the book. And again, I don't have a slide on purpose because I don't want them looking at a slide. I want people looking up at the Torah and the person holding it up. It's a very dramatic moment. However, I do have Eitz Chaim He. Maybe people need the words, but whoever's doing the slides should not hold these slides very long, because again, the action's up at the bima. So you can show it and then take it off. And then they wait during that, and you hold them like, you've seen me hold people when they're getting too enthusiastic, and we only let them move on Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuv Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem, renew our days as of old. That's the cue that both of the doors are closed. So that's enough time to put it away. Questions about this movement with the Torah and closing the ark?
Can you say that again? When is the cue to
Hashivenu. So in other words,
close the ark?
yes. So Eitz Chaim He, while we're singing Eitz Chaim He or whatever melody you use, this is the point at the end. When we get to this point here, I gently move, or Yona gently moves David or whoever's got the Torah. Okay, now go put it away in the ark. And this is enough. Whoops, this is enough time. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Slow down, give them time to close the ark. And sometimes we put away the yads and sometimes we don't. But you don't have to. You can put away the yads later after the service, and the blessing sheets. Make sure that the blessing sheets are out at the beginning of the service. It's part of the setup. Okay, now we've come to the concluding prayers. And Patty, would you read this?
End of Torah service, concluding prayers. Everyone is seated. President or member of the board offers announcements and mentions guests. Guest cards are signed when new people come before the service, so their names and places where they live can be mentioned from the pulpit. Aleinu, we rise if able, page 158 and slide. Kadesh, names from list provided by the office plus anyone who wishes to add names, page 598 and slide. Closing song, Adon Olam on 625, or other song chosen for that service. Ose Shalom, all together. Kadush and Motzi need mic to be on so people in the social hall and Zooming can hear the blessings.
Right, so that's a very quick rundown on coming down the mountain, coming back to reality, bringing people to the practical announcements and readiness. We will practice all these, as we will practice especially how to introduce Kaddish and how to exit from Kaddish next week. So next week, you'll have a chance to practice using our notes and the Siddur. So we're going to practice the opening welcome, and I'm hopeful in the future we won't have to talk about the hostages, but right now that's become part of our opening. We also want to practice the idea of introducing the Baruch Hu, the call to prayer, because it's a whole different section. How to flow from Ahavat Olam through Ve'ahavta, including Shema, that whole love sandwich part, and me thinking about what you might say. You don't have to copy me, that's just how I do it, but think of how you'd like to do it. And then we'll talk about, well, what about music? Can you sing? Do you need accompaniment? What melody are you going to choose? And different times of year, different holidays, different moods, if something happened that day, will affect those choices. How do you lead the Misha Berach healing prayers? We will practice that. And again, you may have called out names before, but asking people, there's a certain technique of how to do it, and we'll practice that. We'll practice introducing the Torah service, which includes the reading and the honors, that whole section. We'll practice leading Kaddish and how you get into it. It's not enough to call the page. That's like a cosmic introduction. That's not a flowing logical introduction. And also the concluding phrases at the end of the Kaddish prayer. I will have examples of a checklist of setup, preparation, honors, and materials. And all of that you should put into some sort of notebook so that you can use it when you're called upon or you volunteer to lead a service. So is there anything in any of the first three that you want to revisit, look at, ask about, comment on? Because we do have time. Yes, Linda Waddell.
Question about opening the ark when the Torah is going to be returned to the ark.
Mm-hmm.
Not to take the Torah out, but opening it. At what point should the ark be opened?
The ark is opened and the Torah is held up high and everybody stands. So that's all at the same time. It's respect for the Torah, and it's just all one big piece of.
So it should be opened then as they're raising the Torah for Hagba.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's not terrible if they're late, but it's better if it's all together. Yes, Anita.
Yeah, and you usually say, will so and so and so and so please come back to open the ark. So
Right. I have it in my outline. It's all everything written, so you're not scrambling. You don't want to see pages flying. You want to be very organized. I have a backup. I have my outline and then I have the tech outline. So if I don't see one, I see the other. Always have a backup. This is sort of behind the scenes so that you can flow in the moment. If everything is very organized and you've really practiced in your head and you know what's coming next, then something that happens that's just miraculous in the moment, you can actually react to. Any other parts that you want to look at again, any of the outlines, any of the other slides, I have everything up so I can show you. And here's another thing. I now have the slides for every single page, Hebrew and English, poetry and commentaries that's in the Mishkan Tefillah, and it's editable. Yeah, not edible, editable. and so if there's a page that you want, you say, I really love that poem, I can easily copy that slide, and Mary, Anita, and I can work on that slide for you. So you have a lot more flexibility than we used to. So I'm really, really happy that I was able to acquire that resource. Yes, Sybil?
I was gonna say, in your outline, it sounds like you're gonna leave us an outline. The comments you usually make before the Kaddish, after you recite the names of all of the yard sites and people were observing, and you invite the attendees if they have any yard sites. You usually make a beautiful comment about it's customary for us all to rise. If you'd write that out so that people don't have to read.
Thank you. I'll write that out for you. Thank you.
Because
if you go to a conservative or Orthodox synagogue, you will only see the mourners rise. There are sometimes in a conservative shul, they might on occasion have everyone rise, but it's pretty much in Reform Reconstructionists and some other places that everyone rises. Usually it's just the mourners who rise and they're noticed. However, for various reasons, yes, because of the Holocaust, but also I imagine because not everybody knows how to say it, and you don't want to have anyone be ashamed. And so it offers support to those people who may only come very, very seldom and may not be familiar with the words. So that's another reason.
I think, yeah, I agree. I think it's very, well, that we're often observing for, yes, that different kinds of the victims of the Holocaust or other situations where there's no one to say Kaddish for all victims. So for us all to join in.
Thank you. I'll write that out. Anita?
In conservative and Orthodox, often they will have somebody, sometimes who's paid or who just is requested, and you make a donation. Okay, if you can't be there to say Kaddish, then somebody can say it for you. I know Linda stands up for me a lot when I'm not there, but there are actually people who, this is something that they do regularly, is that they are assigned to say Kaddish for somebody whose family member can't be there.
Well, I would say that's a very lovely thing to do, and it just ain't the same. So come if you can, do it on Zoom and stand up at home if you can. And yeah, there are people in yeshivas that have lists, and they get donations to their organization, and they say, well, we'll say Kaddish for the person. But I think in this particular case, if you can possibly do it yourself, it has not only meaning, but a visceral.
I do it at home, but Linda does it at.
Right. That's lovely. That's lovely. And sure, let's help each other out. Let's be a shaliach. Let's be a messenger and a representative. But let's take it seriously. When you get the letter from the office that your loved one name is going to be read, try to be there. And if you can't come that week, say, well, could you read it the next week? So I will be there, and I will read it the next week. I want to make that connection of the heart and the soul of the person and the beloved who passed away. So I want to be compassionate about that. Linda?
I was taught it's a mitzvah.
Yes.
If someone can't to say Kaddish on their behalf.
Yeah, absolutely, it's a mitzvah. I'm just saying that if the person can be there themselves, then to do that. Obviously, in this particular case, I know how it's meant, and it is a mitzvah. I sort of laugh when I see people say, "Oh yeah, pay so much per year, and we'll say the name." I mean, don't get off that easily. That's what I was talking about. That's different. Any of the other outlines or parts of the service that you want me to review? I've got them all here. I think the most important thing was showing the difference between the weekday Amidah and the Shabbat Amidah, where it's just honoring and in gratitude for the day and its holiness, rather than all those requests and petitions and wishes that we do during the week. We act on Shabbat as if everything has already been answered and everything is perfect, because we'll pick up the burdens again at the end of Shabbat. So that was a real important point I wanted to make in teaching this class, was that you don't just know the Erev Shabbat service, but you also understand what the basis is and what it flows from originally and how other services are built. Yes, Linda.
I also thank you when you say, let go of the week, breathe it out and breathe in Shabbat. That just is so, to me, is very meaningful to
Huh.
be.
So well, that's interesting. So why don't you each, or planning to come next week, think about how you would help us enter Shabbat and help Shabbat enter us in your own words. So maybe there's a meditation you want to do. Maybe there's a story you want to give. Maybe there's a nigun. Think of your own way to help people and yourself, because the leader needs to do it too, to get into the mood of Shabbat and not be with all the preparation and all the last minute buzz. How do you breathe in Shabbat and breathe out the week? And in your own words, that's a great invitation for everyone to think as a leader. You know, it's a shaliach tzibur. It's the messenger and the leader of the people. And that's your job. It's not just to call out page numbers. That's very superficial. It's really to get us in the mood and move us through from one stage to another up to that high mountain of the Amidah, bring us back down so that we leave uplifted, filled with blessing and really feeling Shabbat. And you got to feel it to be able to lead it. All right, well, I think we'll end here. And just know that Shavuot is coming Sunday night. I expect you all there. And then I've just finished the ketubah, the updating of the ketubah, because we are recommitting to the covenant between the Holy One, who is the beloved, and the people Israel. So you know how at the High Holy Days, the name of God is more like the judge, and there's more king, there's more the idea of distance and a plea for forgiveness. Well, at this time, it's more the lover. We read the Song of Songs on Passover, and on Shavuot, we reconnect in a loving way. So there's much more of this intimate connection with the Holy One. And so there's a Kabbalistic practice, which I brought to us, about updating the covenant in the form of wedding language of a ketubah. So I just worked on that yesterday, and I will be handing that out. Yes, Anita.
I have a question about lineage, seeing as how King David's supposed to be my exponentially great grandfather. But Boaz was from the tribe of Ephraim. And obviously we know that Ruth was a Moabite.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious about how we kind of got from Judah.
How did Judah, right, with Tamar, and how that happened down through the generations? That's your assignment. So take a look. Yeah, it was Bethlehem, and they came back. Well, you know, it could be that there was some intermarriage with different tribes, and then down through the generations, they got landed in a different way. I'm sure there's a wonderful story there, which you're going to tell us next time we meet. You know, you volunteer something, you're appointed.
You asked something, you might have volunteered.
I looked at it. Yeah, I looked at it when you commented. I'm talking about the lineage, the unusual and difficult lineage of both Ruth and Boaz, but it talks about transformation, that even from unexpected or even lowly backgrounds, there can be chesed, there can be loving kindness and transformation and uplift, and from that can come the line of the Messiah. So it's very hopeful. It's going beyond expectations, my friends, which is what all of you do all the time. Shalom, everybody. Hope to see you next week. Come with your notes. We'll all have the prayer book, and we're going to have a tefillah lab on June 3rd, at the end of which we will have a brief Yizkor service, because it'll be the end of Shavuot. And that way I know I'll have a minyan. So I'm really excited about that. So we'll have the Yizkor booklets out. Very good. Shalom, everyone. Bye.
Shalom.